Hey, everybody, welcome to season two. It's had a long break of Psychics and Psychos. It's a whole story we won't get into, but has to do with platforms changing. And so we're back. We figured it out. So this is the beautiful and talented and brilliant and exceptionally wonderful Helen from Irish Granny Tarot and me, Denise Siegel. You know me from lots of different things. All right. So we're doing Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell, and it's a very long and involved story, which Helen has taken a long time to prepare for. And I feel
Sorry.
bad. I feel bad for her because for me, I just look at people's charts and it's like, oh, but she does all the background research and information. So she's going to be filling us all in on the story, whereas I'll be commenting and talking about the astrology. So maybe I should do the astrology piece first and then you can go into the backstory, or should we do back and which way do you want to go, Helen?
Well, why don't we start with the story because you need context, for the actual what the chart shows. But I would suggest if you see something, you've got the chart in front of you right now. If you see something that resonates with what I'm talking about, jump in because you don't want to miss anything, right?
I guess. Yeah. Okay, so then I will pull it up so that I can look at it while we're doing this. All right,
Okay,
so
while
go
you're
ahead
doing
and
that,
yeah.
thank you, Denise, and welcome back, everybody. I hope everybody enjoys this. Did we say what the name of our podcast
Psychics and
is?
Psychos. Well, it'll be
Okay,
on, we'll
okay,
have the
okay,
intro.
okay.
Yeah.
And just so that everybody knows from the very beginning, in case you were wondering, we're not professional anything. We're not psychiatrists or psychologists. We have no license. We're not diagnosing. This is opinion. It's for entertainment only. And having said that, you're not going to believe this story. This is a professional opinion. It's batshit crazy. It's unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. And I'm a long time consumer of true crime stories. You have never heard anything like this. And we're not talking like blood and guts. It's not about that. It's the psychology. It's unbelievable. So before we start, I should tell you a little about the sources. I read this book, which is very interesting. This book goes into more than just the case, it goes into their cultural background. And it's an important feature of the case. They were both Mormon. And I also listened to hours and hours and hours of interviews with Lori's cousin, Megan, and with her sister in law. Is that right? Well, no, Chad's sister in law, Heather. She's married to Chad's brother, Matt. And they both have known Lori and also Chad since they were pretty young teenagers, and they had a lot to contribute. It's impossible to tell this story from the point of view of psychopathology and leave out their background. It's impossible. You have to hear, you're not going to believe. That's all I can say. And I wanted to acknowledge that a lot of the information that I got in the interviews were done by a podcast called Hidden True Crime. And it's a married couple. She's a journalist. He is a psychologist of some sort. They did a good job covering that part of it. I would put out one caveat that they are Mormon, so they're coming from a particular point of view, but it's well worth listening to. I didn't watch so much a lot of the true crime videos of the courtroom. I did see at one point Lori representing herself, as all true psychopaths eventually do, and getting kicked out of court by the judge, which was epic, and everyone should watch that. So, shall we get started?
Sure.
Okay. Lori Noreen Cox was born June 26, 1973. So she just had a birthday. Happy birthday, Lori. Her parents, Janice and Barry, were and still are sovereign citizens, and all that that implies. I won't go into it. It's crazy. Also, her father was a gigantic tax cheat. He actually did spend time in prison. He's very anti-government, and this is setting up her life context. At the time that they were trying to find the missing children, which we'll get to, her father was still embroiled in a war with the government about the IRS. They were Mormons. She was raised a Mormon. Parents were active members of the Mormon church, but they were the kind of Mormons who he preached constantly about what was okay and what wasn't okay. And then in their private life, they did all kinds of inappropriate rule bending. Her cousin describes life at Lori's childhood home as a very unhealthy dynamic. The kids were not liked at school, Lori and her siblings. The house would regularly be toilet papered. They were bullied. According to her cousin Megan, who's the closest in age of 21 cousins, Lori was always a manipulator, even as a child, always in control, always had to be in charge.
Can I just say, can I butt in there?
Oh, yeah, but
she has a very, very much a controlling, manipulative personality. The Pluto-Mars opposition squaring her sun and south node. So she's got a T-square with a south node in it. And that Mars-Pluto opposition means she has a bad temper. She's a control freak. It squares her sun. She is manipulative, controlling, bossy. And then it's part of a grand trine as well. So making her Mercury trines her Mars, trines her Neptune out of sign, which means that once she kind of got into that behavior, it was almost impossible to shake her out of it. Just, it's almost like an unconscious thing. She found her way to just kind of live in that sort of loop, as it were. Mm-hmm. It's a very toxic combination, making her somewhat delusional. The spirituality, she's born with Neptune and Sagittarius on the series. And so that's the religious home, and that feeding into her need to control. And, it probably fueled a lot of her fantasy life and stuff like that she was sort of, maybe like appointed by God type of thing or something like that.
We'll get into that. You're not gonna believe.
Okay.
So her cousin, and I think it's really interesting you're able to tie it in like that. She always got what she wanted. Her cousin said that she disrupted everything if she wasn't happy, and the whole family knew, keep Lori happy and everything will go smoother. It was easier to placate her than to deal with the fallout.
That's right. That's a very powerful T-square with a lot of control issues. They're very hard to she cannot be controlled. Other people she can control, but she can't control her.
There's no holding her back. Yeah, and you could see that playing out in court too with her interaction with the judge. It was pretty remarkable. This cousin is related on the mother's side. Her dad, Megan, the cousin's dad, was a sibling with Lori's mother, Janice. And the cousin says that Lori's mother was raised in a very straight-laced, very traditional Mormon home.
That makes sense.
And she, Megan, the cousin, loved to go visit Lori's family because they got away from the straight-laced stuff. They lived in LA. They were able to go to Disneyland. They were the fun relatives. She said the rules didn't apply. The Mormon rules didn't apply at their house, although her father constantly preached about it. They had a pool. They always went to the beach. They had money to throw around. So these were the California cousins that everybody wanted to spend time with. But as she got older and into teenage years, she said it became very uncomfortable, that the atmosphere in Lori's house was not healthy and not safe. Megan, the cousin's family, was not healthy emotionally, so she didn't have the tools to advocate for herself when she felt herself in an uncomfortable environment. As a kid, she said she couldn't name what was wrong at Lori's house. As an adult, in retrospect, she got a pretty clear notion of what was going on. She gives some examples that are just really. She said she went when she was 13 to Lori's house for a summer visit. She said Lori's parents, Barry and Janice, fought all through dinner,
Yeah, I bet. Uranus in the fourth.
got up in the
Yeah.
middle of dinner and went out in the hallway to fight, and that they were volatile, yelling at each other,
Yes,
something that the cousin
the Mars
wasn't
Pluto
used to,
opposition.
right?
Right.
She said,
right.
listen to this. Lori's mother would sit at the table and take small bites of food, chew them, and spit them out and say, I only need to taste it. I don't need to swallow.
Oh man.
And this comes to bear later with Lori. She did weird things with food too. Anyway, Lori's family spent hours on their appearance. Anywhere they were going to go, anything they were going to do, getting ready was a huge ordeal. Her father was very concerned about their public appearance. She said Lori was high maintenance. And at 13, the girl cousins were getting ready to go somewhere. And Lori absolutely embarrassed her because, remember, Megan is from this straight-laced family. Lori says to her, you need to shave your pubic hair. Because,
oh my God.
I know. She was a couple of years older. Closest in age to this 13-year-old, but still a little bit
What period
older.
of time was this? Would have been what, in the 80s or 90s, or what period of time?
86.
Wow.
No, probably more like 88 because Lori was a couple of years older. So
that
maybe
wasn't
88.
even a thing really back then. That's a weird thing.
Well, they were going swimming and she was putting on a bathing suit and she was being critical. And then she said, and I will paraphrase, she tells this 13-year-old cousin, if you don't do that, if you don't shave, nobody will want to F you.
Oh my God. Wow. That's
so
a weird thing to say.
Megan said she was sheltered and shocked. She'd never heard people use those words. She couldn't believe her cousin would know any of this kind of stuff to begin with because of the church expectations for what they would be aware
Can I
of.
also say, I'm going to also say the Pluto square the sun opposing the Mars on the angles, because I only have a solar chart. We don't have a time for her. But the solar chart is also applicable. She was obviously exposed to some kind of sexuality very early on, and that became a source of her power. And it being in the fourth house, it seems like it was happening in the home. It's in her third house, which may be her brother, some kind of sexual relationship with the brother.
You must be psychic.
And that Uranus in the fourth house is a very the parents were totally involved with each other in Libra and probably really neglected the kids, big time.
Okay, I love this because maybe I don't need to read these notes because you're basically
Okay.
She said that a cousin is saying this now. There was so much inconsistency that the father would look at porn on the computer, and that the father, now this is her uncle, Lori's father, was very handsy with the children, and he was under investigation for that kind of behavior.
Child pornography, or was he, or molestation, or both?
I think both. He was always preaching and long-winded about religion. So she said Lori's house was this weird combination of sex and religion. The Cox family was very free with talk that wasn't appropriate for the Mormon church. Her cousin told her, or cousins told her, that every Sunday their parents took a nap to have sex and all the kids sat around and listened.
Oh my God, that's weird. That is really weird.
And she said that the cousins would get together and often speculate about the sex life of their peers at school. She said one summer that they were left alone. The parents all went away for a couple of days, and the older kids were left in charge of the younger kids. Always a great arrangement. And Lori arranged a double date for Lori and her boyfriend, and Megan, the cousin, and a guy she'd never met. And they spent a couple of hours at a dark golf course. She said she spent the time fighting this guy off because Lori and her boyfriend took off into the bushes and, draw your own conclusions. She wasn't taught, she said, by her environment, her family upbringing, how to handle herself, how to protect herself, how to say no. And she couldn't set boundaries. And it was
how old were they when this happened?
Somewhere 14, 15.
So is that how old Megan was, or is that how old Lori was?
That's how old Megan was.
Okay, so Lori was probably like a
16,
17.
17. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And on the way home, and this is really telling to me, if you're looking at if you all have your bingo cards out with the psychopathy checklist, here's something for you to check off. On the way home, Lori's boyfriend intentionally ran over a cat, went out of
Oh
his
my
way to run
God.
after a cat, and Lori
Oh,
laughed about it.
wow.
Yeah. So she was raised in this weird atmosphere of church and weird family. And the family wasn't strict, which is weird because in the Mormon church, family culture is everything and reflects the church.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
Megan said she just couldn't talk about the issues she saw. She didn't have words for it, but they made her really uncomfortable. She said in their family, in the church in general, girls are raised to have no opinion. You do as you're told. You're cooperative. You
Right.
don't argue. You don't talk about any mistakes because you want a veneer of perfection. And the family has to look like the perfect family. And family
Mhm.
secrets are kept. It's nobody's business. We don't talk about it outside the house. So she was raised, and Lori was raised with this sense of control from the church and the family system. She said Lori's parents continued to control all of the kids even after they became adults. There was this weird dynamic. They didn't
Mhm.
have their own lives. Same with Chad. They were still in a parent child dynamic. The
Mhm.
cousin describes Lori as always having a veneer, but it wasn't truthful. She,
Right.
as an adult, was considered a sweet and loving mother. She was
No.
charming and
No, she never probably
beautiful.
was. She
No,
has a South Node Sun conjunction in Cancer, and that is not feeling nurtured when you're growing up. And she is definitely with a square to Mars Pluto. She's probably always abusive and violent with her children and controlling and, uh, very self centered and had a lot of shadow stuff from her own problems with her family of origin that she probably projected onto her children. And Pluto rules her fifth house there. So she was probably extremely controlling with her own children and violent. I wouldn't be surprised if she beat them even before we knew about her being,
right. And she had
this way.
no role model either, even under the best
No,
of circumstances. She was
no.
a cheerleader because it was all about appearance, and eventually she was a beauty queen after she was married. Um, but the cousin has an interesting story to tell that if you disagreed with her or if you stood in her way of something that she wanted, she was vicious,
Vicious. Yeah.
vicious.
Yeah, I'm
That she
sure she
was
was.
stuck emotionally in early teenage years for emotional responses.
That makes
Uh,
sense.
so she there's a story about a date, and we'll get to it, but Lori got married when she was 18. She ran away from home and got married, and eventually got divorced, of course, and within a year got divorced, and then lived in an apartment in Austin, Texas with her brother Adam. And
Mhm.
they invited the cousin Megan to come and live with them. Lori was
Mm.
19, newly divorced. Megan was 18. They were both working at a tanning salon, and Adam was a DJ. He was a local celebrity as a
Mm.
DJ. So, and this is the good brother. for 4 months, they lived there like this, doing part-time tanning booth and full-time partying and drinking and partying. They
Right.
didn't go to school. They didn't have full-time
Right.
regular employment. They got into the bars underage because, that's what a good Mormon would do, drink
Where were they
underage.
at?
Pardon me?
Where were they
Austin.
living? Austin,
Austin.
Texas?
Yeah.
Okay, that makes
And
sense. Yeah.
they got in because her brother was the DJ and he got him
Right,
in.
right. That makes sense. Yeah.
So Megan got asked out by a guy, and he had been rejected by Lori. She brushed him off. He asked Megan out, and Megan went out with him.
I'm sure
Lori,
she got in trouble for that.
oh,
But
wait till
she's
you
really
hear.
competitive.
Oh,
Yeah,
wait till you hear.
very competitive.
She
Yeah.
started giving Megan the cold shoulder the minute she heard. Then she gave her the third degree.
Mhm.
Then she got Lori's mother, to fly out from Los Angeles to tell Megan you need to move out of this apartment. You're a bad example. You're a bad influence on Lori, and I'm here to help you get out of this apartment.
Wow.
And they put her on a Greyhound bus with a one-way ticket to go to where her parents were in San Antonio, and that was the end of that.
Wow.
Her parents never knew why. Her parents never knew what happened. She said that Lori was ambitious and she would do anything to get what she wanted.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And
okay, so
competitive, extremely competitive with other women with all that.
here's a story that'll just anyone
Um,
who's ever
kind of
gotten
sounding
married
cancer.
and cared about the looks of the wedding, everything had to match the color, all that stuff. So Megan's getting married, and she said she was forced by the family to ask Lori to be a bridesmaid. So Megan had a color, and she told them, you have to, buy a dress that is that color. And Lori didn't like that color. So
What
Lori,
color was it?
it
Is
was
it tangerine?
purple. It was a
Purple.
light
Okay. She
purple.
didn't like purple. Okay.
No. And so she
Weird.
wanted blue. So Lori, without telling the bride, bought her own dress in blue and then bought dresses for all the other bridesmaids in blue, so that at the day of the wedding, the bridesmaids all showed up in something completely different than what the bride had asked them to wear.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's
which is
very manipulative. Yeah.
ballsy. Yeah, really, really
Well,
weird.
it's that's very passive aggressive.
And
Extremely.
later in the story, these names will be more familiar. But her friend Zulema, who actually
Zulima? That's
ended
a
up,
weird name.
it's a weird name, married her brother Alex later on in the story. Her friend Zulema confirmed that Lori always changed the rules and they did not apply to her.
Of course not.
And her father was exactly the same way. He felt that he was above the law. As I said, he went to
Mm-hmm.
prison. He also practiced law without a license, without going to law school, because he was a sovereign
Oh,
citizen. He had a scale, and scales are important. They come up again later. He had a rating scale. He called people the lower 95, and he and his family were the top 5 out of 100.
okay.
So everybody else was the lower 95. All people were stupid and lazy
Mm-hmm.
and ugly. He was
Wow.
obsessed with appearance and pretended to be religious, although he didn't abide by any of the laws. So they would
Right.
go to church as teenagers. When they would come to visit Lori's family, they would go to church, but they would sneak out and they'd go drive around and get fast food and have a little 2-hour party. And then they'd come back, sneak in, and pretend like they'd been sitting in the back of the church the whole time.
That sounds about right.
Yeah. And meanwhile, they'd go to church, and when they got home, her father would spend a whole lot of time ridiculing the people they saw, about how they were dressed and how unattractive they were. Her father constantly commented on her physical appearance. He talked about her breasts a lot,
Wow.
and he paid for her to have implants.
Wow.
Um,
Nice. That's very fatherly.
and although they paid lip service to Mormon values, both of her parents cheated regularly. And the cousin said, of
Makes
course, there
sense.
was inappropriate sexual dynamics in the house.
I'm
Lori,
not surprised at all.
yeah,
That Uranus in the fourth house in Libra, they were probably very unconventional, actually. You know,
she was always sitting on her
kind of
brother's
cuckoo.
lap and walking around in a bikini, at
Mm.
home, and, in front of her brothers and father. Just things that would kind of, it would skeevy.
Yeah.
She had an older sister who died. And
Oh, wow.
here's where already the death is starting to feature in this story. And my red flags went up when I read about this. Her older sister died after supposedly having some weird, unusual, hard to define medical condition for a long
Hmm.
time. And her father, the rumor has it, now this is allegedly, rumor has it that he was giving her morphine.
Wow. Why? To molest her, maybe?
This is at this point, the sister was an adult.
Really?
Yeah, yeah, an older sister. So her
Wow.
brother, Alex, who features heavily later in the story, her brother Alex married very young, and his wife immediately left him because of the crazy dynamics in the family, the inappropriate sexual touching, especially between Lori and my husband.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah.
the brother Alex told his wife that his sister Lori was hot. Because that's how your brother should always talk about you.
That is really disturbing. Yeah,
And
that's
she,
gross.
Lori, and her brother Alex would often mime having sex in front of her sister-in-law.
Good
I'm
Lord.
laughing because I'm incredulous. This
That's
is
insane.
unbelievable.
That is really weird.
Um, her sister's husband, this is another sister's husband, said that her childhood, Lori's childhood, and her parents were a psychological hornet's nest. Lori's
Mm.
father lured her out of her marriage with the promise of a car and a long road trip with him. It's her father. So
Hey.
when she shared an apartment with her cousin and her brother, she was unsatisfied with life and trying to find something to fill it. And all this time, as she was becoming an adult, and even into when her children were missing, her father was all up in her business. He was very much involved in her life. He was also fighting with the IRS all those years, still fighting with the IRS about taxes he didn't feel he had to pay. He was really into conspiracies. Now, I read a lot about this. I took volumes of notes, and then I decided maybe for another time, but I'll give you a sentence or two. There is a prophecy believed by some marginal groups of Mormons called the White Horse prophecy. And in this, there's the symbol of the white horse is the harbinger of the apocalypse. I'm very much abbreviating the story.
Okay.
And that it will bring about the saving of the United States Constitution. People who followed this prophecy were people like the Bundys, who remember they
Not the
had
Ted Bundys.
standoff. No,
Oh, okay.
Bundys, the
Right. The
family.
ones in
Yeah, they had the.
Ruby Ridge.
No, this is after Ruby Ridge. These people were also believers of the prophecy who they had a ranging deal, cows, like they paid for
A
free range of
ranch.
their cows,
Oh, I
and
remember
they
that
were
story.
putting them on
Yeah.
government land
Right. Right.
against the
And they got in
law.
trouble
Yeah.
for that.
I
Yeah.
don't have the vocabulary. I don't know what you call it, but yeah. Orrin Hatch, Senator Orrin Hatch
Oh,
from
nice.
Utah. He was a racist.
Yes.
He
Big
was a
time.
big believer. Yeah. Um,
Hmm.
they believe that the society is sick and journalism is not to be trusted. So this is the mindset she came into adulthood. So I've got a very brief chronology here of what happened to Lori after her first divorce. And as we go through, we'll go into details. So in 1992, this after her no, this is her first marriage. She married her high school sweetheart. I found his name. His name was Nelson Yanes. They were immediately divorced. She was 19. In
Right.
95, she got married again to a guy whose last name is Lagoya. They had a son in 96 named Colby, and Colby comes up in the story later. Divorced in 98, remarried in 2001 to Joseph Anthony Ryan Jr. This was the
She's really
father of.
setting a world record there with the
Oh, we're not
amount of
done.
marriages and divorces.
I know, we're not
Every
done.
couple of years, let's get married to
Guinness
someone
Book of
else.
World Records. So she married Joe Ryan. He adopted Colby, and they had a daughter, Tylee, in 2002. 2004 is when she was Mrs. Texas contest.
Mm.
She was also on the Wheel of Fortune. That show. She won some stuff on the Wheel of Fortune.
Wow.
And you can Google that particular 10 minutes. It's on YouTube, and
Wow.
it's really noxious. It's gross.
Mm.
She shopped around for a counselor in 2005, a marriage counselor, because she had a bitter custody battle with Joe Ryan. And she made all sorts of allegations, as you can imagine. She
I'm
got
sure.
divorced from him. He lost custody because of her allegations, because she cherry picked, counselors
Right.
who would go along with her. In 2006, she married Charles Vallow, who himself was kind of an unstable guy. In 2007, Ryan told people that he was afraid of Lori's brother, Alex.
Hmm.
And Alex actually attacked Ryan shortly after that, beat him up,
Wow.
and spent 90 days in jail for it. Then
Why did he
he,
attack him? What was the reason?
uh, well, I think it had to do with the allegations of abusing the children. She got custody by accusing him falsely of abusing
Oh,
the
I remember
children.
that. That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah,
And
she lied.
Alex was,
Of
we'll get
course, because
into
she did that all the
Alex, and
time.
he was always her
Right.
defender, you know.
Right.
So Alex spent 90 days in jail. Then he went on a tour of stand-up facilities and was a stand-up comedian. And you can hear him, that's also on YouTube, doing his stand-up routine. And the focus of his stand-up was going to jail for beating up his former brother-in-law. Seriously. In 2007, Lori started to tell people that her daughter Tylee was the reincarnation of Lori's dead sister.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
now things are really starting to get bizarre.
Heating up. Right.
And in 2007, her brother Adam said there was something really wrong between his sister and brother, Lori and Alex.
Who
That it
said
was
that?
her brother Adam, who the DJ that she used to live with,
Okay.
is now recognizing there's an unhealthy dynamic between his sister Lori and his brother Alex, the
I
one who
see.
went to jail, the stand-up comedian.
Right. Okay.
In 2013, she and Charles adopted Charles' grandnephew JJ, who
And
was
Charles is who now? There's so
Charles is
many
her
people in this
husband.
story.
I know this is
Okay.
her husband she
This is
married in
Charles Vallow, right?
Charles Vallow. So
Jeez.
7 years go by, and together they adopt this little boy, JJ, who has autism. He's the son of Charles' niece or grandniece. I don't know. He belongs in his family. There was nobody available who wasn't strung out or had problems, and so they adopted this little boy quite willingly, quite happily. And in 2015, so a few years go by, she's deteriorating, which we'll find out later. 2015, she got real interested in this series that she found out about called Preparing a People by a guy called Chad Daybell.
Yeah, Daybell. Yeah.
And that was 2015. 3 years later, she met Chad at a book event. He was a writer. And she hosted him at her house. Her husband was gone, and so she hosted him. And this is before she married Chad. And I'm sorry, before she married, I can't keep track, before she married Charles, and hosted Chad to come to her house.
Charles
And
Vallow?
yeah, her husband.
So she wasn't married to him yet?
No,
She was.
she was. Well, maybe I wrote that down wrong.
I
No,
think she was married.
yes, it was Charles. It was Charles, and she invited him to her house. While Charles was gone, she invited Chad
Right, because
over.
they were married then, weren't they?
Yeah,
Weren't
to
they
do
when
like
they
a
adopted the kid? Okay.
do a book discussion,
Sure.
but that
Yeah.
disintegrated into a big weekend long makeout sessions.
Right, of course. Yeah.
Joe Ryan, the ex-husband who allegations were made against, who Alex had beaten up, was found dead. People weren't sure what happened to him. They they thought maybe it was his heart or blood clots or something. And a month later, Lori told Joe's sister, "The world's a better place without your brother." She got $350,000 of insurance.
Wait. Okay, go back there.
Okay.
Who said this to her? I'm
Lori has
confused.
this animosity against her ex-husband, Joe.
Okay.
And they go through a messy divorce, and then there's this big custody battle.
Right.
She makes allegations against Joe, which gives her full custody.
And Joe's last name is what again?
Ryan.
Ryan. Okay.
The father of Tylee. And shortly after
right.
this whole thing culminates in him dying mysteriously.
Who died mysteriously? Joe died mysteriously?
Joe.
You're kidding me.
No.
I didn't know that.
Yes, he dies
Wow.
mysteriously. And
How
Lori
does he
tells
die mysteriously?
they
They don't
don't
know.
know. They don't know. Was it his heart? Was it blood clots? It was very
They
similar to
didn't do an
somebody else.
autopsy.
Pardon?
They didn't do an autopsy. It's not like he was an old dude or something.
No, he wasn't an old dude, and I don't know if they did an autopsy.
That's weird in
We
itself.
will, I don't remember, and we're going to be talking more about this, and I may have written it down later.
Wow.
But long story short, he was dead. It was unexpected. Everybody moved on. She got a $350,000 life insurance
Heck.
policy
Wow.
for her daughter from him because he hated her, but from
What
her
she
daughter.
spent,
She was
probably.
in
Right.
charge of it, yes. And
Right.
she told his sister, she told her dead ex-husband's sister, her former sister-in-law, that the world was a better place without him, without her.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nice. Compassionate. Yeah. Hmm.
In 2018, she appeared on Chad Daybell's podcast.
Why?
And then you can go on YouTube and you can watch a few of these videos, uh, police body cam videos of them being called to the house where she was supposed to be living with Charles. He was away on business. When he came back, he found all his stuff moved out of the house and his truck was gone. She sold his truck. And he told the cops, there's something really wrong with my wife. I don't know where she is, but I'm concerned about the children. I'm concerned about Tylee. I'm concerned about JJ. He went into a long litany of all the weird things, which we'll talk about, but he called her nuts. And she ended up actually spending part of a day in a mental facility as a result of this video that you can watch on YouTube. But the cops, it was a Mormon town, and the cops were Mormon, and they did not take Charles seriously. And shortly
Right.
after that video, Charles was shot by Alex, the brother, in the living room. And
Right.
so
Wow.
that brings us up to when she now was free to get together with Chad Daybell.
Wow. That is a lot of drama in a very short period of time.
It's exhausting to read about.
I
And
can't even keep track of all of
I was
it.
going to say, keeping track, it's impossible.
That is nuts.
That kind of chaos and instability is a symptom.
Yes, of her personality, I think we could say. So let me just talk a little bit about that. Okay,
Oh, yeah.
so
Yeah.
okay, so all right, so having that T-square, so she's got this south node sun conjunction, which means she came into this world carrying this stuff from some other time, another life, a feeling that so this creates a lot of insecurity, that south node sun conjunction. It's in her solar first house, so about her identity, about who she really is. And that Mars Pluto opposition both square that. So here's a person who's kind of a lost soul, but wants to be in control of everything all the time, and who is got a bad temper and bossy and everything and dictatorial, and everything has to be her way. But she's going to do it in this very sneaky kind of passive aggressive way, use other people to do her dirty work. People with this kind of cardinal kind of stuff don't tend to get their own hands dirty. They tend to find out someone else who will do
Wow,
the work for them.
that's her in a nutshell. Yeah.
And she knows how to manipulate people. She comes in as somebody who's got a knack for that. She's got her Venus Mercury conjunction in Cancer, which creates an out of sign grand fire trend with her Mars in Aries and her Neptune in Sagittarius. So she's got a Neptune retrograde conjunction to Ceres in conjuncting her Sun. So she tends towards kind of going in and out of being in control and being kind of in a fantasy, if that makes sense. So there's kind of a schism in her personality where she probably has kind of a delusional side, where she can kind of, and the religiosity that she grew up in and the way she was raised is not probably helpful to her personality at all. It would give her an out and sort of a rationalization for her need to control and dominate other people. But on some level, she probably also knew very well that, what she was doing wasn't right. So she's not somebody who's mentally ill. Let's put it that way. She's someone who's probably psychopathic, especially with the
Personality
South.
disorder. Yeah.
She's got a personality disorder. The South Node Sun conjunction in Cancer is a feeling of not being lovable or loved and not nurtured. And she probably, that's clearly that Uranus in the fourth house is the erratic family dynamic, and that Pluto, Sun, Mars, Sun. She, instead of feeling love, she got control, and she would have a fit or throw a fit or step into positions where she could manipulate people. And that's how she got her sense of, of being, if she couldn't be loved, then at least she could get what she wanted. And then her North Node is in Capricorn, which means in this life, she was really meant to try to do something for herself, to sort of make it good on her of her life and have a career and do something in this world. Her moon in Taurus is squaring her Jupiter in Aquarius, which implies that her mother came from a good home, probably was relatively stable in certain ways, but also had this really weird that Jupiter square in Aquarius, like erratic, crazy, streak in her. So she was kind of probably very in her own world. The mom might have been a little bit, I wouldn't say there might have been some kind of tension between her and her mother, but it was probably not direct. It was probably some kind of sort of checking out and allowing her daughter to kind of flail a little bit and not really, I don't know if that makes sense, because that Jupiter Aquarius is sort of like a neglect kind of thing. But her mom probably, on the surface of things, seemed like a normal person. You know what I'm saying? Relatively compared to the rest of the family members. But also has probably some personality disorder issues as well, and is not completely in her right mind, the dad with the Saturn and Gemini in the 12th is a dad who could go to jail, but who's also kind of a liar, con man, somebody who's a manipulator, tends towards criminality with it being in the 12th house. Now these are all the negative things, if she was manifesting a more positive aspects of this chart, maybe her dad would have been spiritually inclined, but he kind of pretended to be spiritually inclined, but he really wasn't,
Mhm.
Her Neptune in conjunction with Ceres in the retrograde, probably the only way she felt like her parents cared about her was the religious framework they put around it. But then there's also this critical thing and the food thing, which is the series, and it being in the sixth house, where does she ever have problems with bulimia or
Yeah,
anorexia or
there's a
anything?
point we'll talk about where she was telling people she never needed to eat again.
Mm.
And this is as an adult, well into one of her multiple marriages. To me, this is a in my professional opinion, you're looking at nature versus nurture, very broadly defined. You've got somebody who obviously, I mean, it's obvious she's got some personality thing
She
going on,
does.
right?
But she comes in with some of that. I mean, some of this is probably genetic with this.
Right.
She
That's what I'm
probably
saying.
has a
Nature.
mental health issue to begin with, and it
Yeah.
probably runs in the family because it's in
Yeah.
Cancer.
And
Um,
nurture, she was raised in this extremely patriarchal
right.
religious system. And her mother was raised in a very strict Mormon family. And according to the cousin, the mother's family was real straight and narrow. So you're talking about A
Right. So she was
woman,
rebellious a little bit against that,
right?
for that Jupiter square the man. Mm-hmm.
She goes into an adulthood, her mother did, goes into an adulthood looking for a man, my opinion, who would mirror what she's used to, what she saw her father doing, which is patriarchal and controlling and very straight-laced. But there was other stuff going on with her mom. And then this is the environment that Lori is being raised in, this patriarchal stuff on her mother's side
Yeah,
and
but
pseudo patriarchal on her father's side.
but ironically, the person who's probably really in control is her, because
Yeah.
she is the most I mean, she has she has a T square if you put her nodes in there, but she has a grand square. But if you look at just the T square, the Mars Pluto square the sun, it's very tight, and it's all in cardinal signs with the nodes on it. The south node and then the north node on the other side of it. This is someone who came in with a very controlling, kind of bad. I mean, not to give Mars and Aries a bad name, but Mars and Aries tends to be very reactive and angry, and they can be quick to anger and then resolve. I mean, in a good, well-placed chart, it can mean somebody who gets mad and then lets it go. But in her case, it's opposing her Pluto. She does not get control. She has the potential for violence, aggression. She's extremely competitive, and she's a user too. You know what I'm saying? She uses
Manipulator.
other
Yeah.
people, a manipulator, to get what she wants in the
Yeah.
world. That's kind of her modus operandi. And then
Yeah.
you have, her moon in Taurus, which, again, in a good person's chart who's using it well, can be a very grounding thing. But in her case, it squares her Jupiter. It's a greedy kind of materialistic kind of placement. It rules all of her Cancer. So there's sort of this, there's never enough. She's never going to have enough. She's always got to have more. She's kind of greedy, and her motivations for all of her identity and the way she feels lovable and the way she thinks about things, she plays the game like she's this great mother, Cancer, but really her motivations are material. They're for her own survival. They're her way to make a living, in a way. Do you know what I'm saying? And kind of get what she wants in the world. It's not because she really wants to nurture someone else. She wants other people to move around a chessboard, and children are great for
Part of
that,
that.
right?
Yeah, that's right. They're
You
part of
know,
that. Well, this all comes to a head, obviously at the end of the story when the court cases happen, which we'll get to. There's a huge debate. There's the arguments that are put forward in all the trials, more than one trial. And on one side, the prosecutors are arguing these are her motivations, and on the defense side, of course, they're pointing fingers at him, and then vice versa. But what you've
pointing
got is
fingers
a
at who? At Chad
Chad.
Daybell?
Chad, yeah.
I have to say, I haven't seen Chad Daybell's chart, but she is really dangerous, this person. And the other thing that she's also got this Chiron Uranus thing opposing. So has a lot of wounding from childhood that only made this whole thing a lot worse.
Yes, yes.
And then she's got, this grand trine feeding into this with a square from Chiron to her Venus Mercury and Uranus squaring it. So she's got a bunch of squares. So she's got a lot of internal conflict as well. Like she's kind of, somebody who might become an alcoholic, or somebody who kind of needs to escape on some level. So she's using men and children as her way to do that. But the grand water trine is really dangerous in this situation because, like I've talked about grand trines before, grand trines often show up in like devastatingly bad earthquake charts or really big events, because it basically means all of the pieces kind of fit together and it becomes really easy for something to occur. Now, that can be something really good, like somebody like Obama, who won, he has a grand earth trine, who won the presidency, the first Black person to ever be in that position and break through all these, barriers. and he was an amazing orator and all this, and he was able to manifest things. But that's because he's a good person and he's using that energy in a positive way, right? As a protective force, he has this charisma. In her case, she has charisma too.
Oh yeah, people
And
said that charming, superficially charming.
she probably had a lot of charisma. She knew how to, she got a lot of energy and ability to manipulate people like nobody's business and put on show, and make everything come together in the way that she wanted it to. Like it's almost instinctual. It's like a gift, that she honed in other lifetimes. But in this case, it's for evil purpose, it's for bad purpose. It's to serve her own ego and her own desires and her own need for control and her own mental health issues, instead of it being used to the benefit of herself and others. She's using it to just to manipulate people. It's all cardinal, and then she's got this Venus Mercury conjunction in Cancer. Now Venus in Cancer years ago in the early 90s, and it's also squaring her Chiron. So she's got issues with her romantic life. She's got a very intense sex drive with that Mars Pluto opposition squaring her sun. She's really sexual. She really likes sex, probably. She's very motivated by attention and manipulation, and her sexuality is almost like a man's, if that makes sense. Like,
yeah, she used it quite a bit. Yeah.
Right.
She weaponized it is what
she weaponized it. Yeah. Right. And then the Venus in Cancer, from according to some astrologers I knew in the 90s. Now, I haven't proven this out and I don't know this to be 100% true. So I'm just going to throw it out. This one possibility is Venus in Cancer is known to be kinky, meaning they like kind of unusual sexual things, breaking taboos and things like that. And it's conjunct her Mercury, which in her case could mean she, besides the Pluto in the third house opposing the Mars and squaring the sun, that she was probably having sex with her brother. And she probably liked it, that breaking, like that secret sex thing. And she may have other kinks that we don't know about. I don't know if you found anything out about her, but I'm wondering if that was part of the thing that kind of drew in the dudes.
How bad is it about somebody's life when you have trouble remembering a little thing like sexual kinks, because there's so much garbage going on in her life? We'll have to pursue the notes because I don't
I'm wondering
remember.
if she does. Yeah. I mean, even if you didn't throw in something like she was into, I mean, you got to wonder.
It's hard to come up with something.
If maybe she was having, if she herself was sexually molesting her own children, or if there was some kind of other thing going on there.
Well, I'm going to go out on a limb. I have no proof, and I'm just a gut feeling. I think it's pretty obvious she was molested as a child.
She was definitely molested, and probably by her brother too, besides her dad. But I wonder if she perpetrated molestation as well.
We don't know that.
I wouldn't be surprised if she did. And maybe, I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if she wasn't doing inappropriate things. And also like that bending kind of taboo stuff with her brother is very kinky in its own weird way. Do you know what I mean?
It gets better. Stay tuned. there's more. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable.
She's really, I mean, she probably had such a bad temper with that Mars Pluto square sun. I mean, know someone who has something similar, but it's out of bounds, not as tight. And the kind of tantrums that she could throw were probably epic. Like,
people gave in to her.
Scary big. Yeah. She doesn't get her way.
There's a lot of debate at the culmination of all of that happens, that unfolds here. There's an enormous debate. Are we talking about greed and sex and ego? Are we talking about religious delusion? Are we talking about Chad's mental illness, which we're going to get into? When you put it all together, we'll talk about it. I don't want to spoil the ending.
Well, I would say based on her chart, her motivations are all about her.
Mhm.
They're all about moving the pieces around to get what she wants,
Mhm.
which is to feel secure, to feel like she's being taken care of, to be financially secure, and nobody else really matters, including the children. And so if they're disposable and she can't just, and they're not part of something her partner would want, she's happy to throw them away because she's really somebody who lacks compassion in a major way, and that has issues with compassion and is also extremely insecure as a person as well.
Her cousin said that about her lacking compassion. Her cousin said people thought she was a sweet and loving mother, but she was the farthest thing from that. That was
It
an
was all
image,
fake. It
yeah,
was all
that
an
she put
image.
on.
Yeah.
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 So do you want to continue with Chad, or do you want to do it in a separate video, or do you want to edit
But,
it?
well, why don't we stop here and
Okay.
then we have time to do one more maybe? Well, we'll talk. Well, okay, we'll stop here. This is the side with Lori. We're going to do Chad next, and the next episode will be about Chad. So thanks for joining us on Psychics and Psychos with Helen and Denise, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us
Thanks,
for season
everybody.
2. All right.
Thank you.